NAR has settled for $418 million. Well, better way of putting it is it's a proposed settlement. So there's still several things that need to happen before this actually goes through. And most likely it's going to change slightly because of the legal implications and everything that's going to continue happening here in the following months. So what we're going to do is we're going to see what was actually proposed, what changes we're going to be seeing as real estate agents at the current moment, regardless if this gets this proposed settlement gets approved or not by the courts, which still needs to happen in the coming months. There are changes that are happening to the way that you're doing real estate today. So we need to be informed of what that's going to be because it impacts you. It impacts your bottom line very, very quickly. So let's get into this. This is an email that was just sent out by NAR. Now, originally of course, the press beat the actual entities that were in the arena. The story was initially broken by the New York Times. So New York Times was the one that received the scoop before this even went out. So all of NAR members received this very email in their inbox. So we're going to review it and see what this looks like for us. So we're going to link this particular a message down in the description, but also I want you to go and check out the New York Times. Typically, I don't endorse publications that we don't cover per se, but here it would be a valuable thing to read and see how it's being portrayed to the general public, to the buyers and sellers, to the clients that you're going to be in front of every single day. There's a lot of value in knowing that. This particular breakdown that we're going to do and review is geared more towards us real estate agents. So this is directly from NAR, showing a bit of why things were done the way that they are, but also what changes are going to be happening so we know what's at stake and what's going to happen. Right now, the one thing, well, let's continue and then we'll talk about some reassurances. We have always wanted to reduce the significant strain on our members and provide a path forward for the industry. That's why today we announced a proposed settlement agreement. Again, proposed settlement agreement that would end litigation of claims brought on behalf of home sellers related to broker commissions. The settlement is subject to court approval. So that's important to note. This is still not defined. This is not set in stone. There's going to still be months of uncertainty in terms of how exactly we're going to be operating and a lot of pivoting. That's a very important thing that we need to understand as agents. There's going to be a lot of maneuvering that we as agents need to do, right? So the last thing that we need is to just ignore this. At this point, you cannot ignore this. If you have, checked out thinking, well, what's going to happen is going to happen. Well, what's going to happen is happening right now. So now's the time to check in because there's going to be consistent pivoting that you need to do in order to operate your business at a high level. The agreement will resolve claims against NAR over 1 million NAR members, all state, territorial, and local realtor associations, all association-owned MLSs, and all brokerages with a NAR member as principal that had a residential transaction volume in 2022 of $2 billion or less. So that essentially means a good portion of the industry. Throughout the settlement, well, that's not going to be important. So let's just get into the goals. Well, the goals, if you want to read what the goals are: secure release of liability, which is important, of course. That's why that's what we're actually looking at right now, and preserve the choices consumers had regarding real estate services and compensation. So those are the primary goals that were stated by NAR that they were looking to accomplish. So the proposed settlement is what's important here, at least for you, and how things are going to be changing and what this actually means. Do yourself a favor, at least avoid some Facebook groups and some Reddits and some all that stuff for today. And I would say that because it's a Friday when I'm recording this. It just came down a couple minutes ago, or this was just released a couple minutes ago. And there's a lot of hot takes in there. There's a lot of bad information in there. There's a lot of good information, but there's also a lot of conflict. So you're going to see people that typically blame are going to start blaming. People that are typically positive are going to be positive. People that are typically set in their ways are going to be set in their ways. There's going to be a lot of morals, just grandstanding, but no real solutions, right? So just, log out of your social media apps, at least for today. until the dust settles, and then there's actually something valuable brought to you that you can actually take action on. All right, so the agreement would settle NAR over, release the liability. That's what we're looking at right now. The agreement would release NAR over, and then everybody else. So over 1 million NAR members, the state, territorial, and local realtor associations, all association-owned MLSs, and all brokerages with a NAR member as principal. Essentially, the broker is a NAR member that had a residential transaction volume in 2022 of $2 billion or below from liability to types of claims brought in these cases on behalf of home sellers. All right. So there's some exemptions, so there's exclusions, and really at the end, it's going to be Home Services of America that gets excluded. So despite NAR's efforts, agents affiliated with Home Services of America and its related companies, they're going to be excluded. Now you may be wondering, why? Why is that the case? Well, originally in the Sitzer-Burnett lawsuit, which is essentially the settlement that's happening right now, there was 5 entities that were implicated, that were sued. And that was Anywhere, so Anywhere Real Estate, RE/MAX, Keller Williams, Home Services of America, and NAR. Those were the 5 entities. Anywhere and RE/MAX, before it went to court, before it was actually litigated in court, they bounced. And when I say they bounced, they settled. I forget the exact amount. It's like 80. I'm going to say 80 something million from NAR and 50 something from Anywhere. And that might be in reverse. But anyways, it was 80 something and $50 million in settlement from those 2 brokerages. That was before the break. This is the break. That was before it was litigated, before it actually went to court. After it went to court, and there was a verdict of 1.8 or 1.9 billion dollars, which could multiply to over $5 billion, so triple the damages in this particular suit. After that happened, after the settlement was lost, the verdict came down and the lawsuit was lost. You had Keller Williams about a month ago, they settled for $70 million. So that leaves 2 individuals, 2 entities still in the equation. And that is Home Services of America and NAR. Well, NAR, assuming that this goes through, they would be leaving Home Services of America by their lonesome. So the verdict is still there, if you will. But I suspect that given this, Home Services of America is possibly hours away from settling as well. I just don't see something like this going all the way to the end, because right now it's going through appeal and all that fun stuff. So there's just a lot of different things that at this point, I would be shocked if Home Services of America by next week doesn't have a settlement as well. Anyway, so that's a little bit about the history there. I know a lot of folks have been seeing this headline, and you got this in the inbox and are probably getting up to speed on what happened in this particular video. So I wanted to break that down to share a little bit of the backstory to kind of where we are right now. There's a bit more. There's other videos that we've covered in this channel, but I at least wanted to provide that timeline in that series because it matters of why we're here, a little bit of why we're here. Compensation offers moved off of MLS. This is something that it's gonna impact you directly very, very quickly. Here by mid-July, there's gonna be some changes, and I've already seen in some Facebook groups just absolutely wildly wrong information. So NAR has agreed to put in place a new rule prohibiting offers of compensation on the MLS. Offers of compensation could continue to be an option consumers can pursue off MLS through negotiation and consultation with real estate professionals, as sellers can offer buyer concessions on the MLS, for example, concessions for buyer closing costs. This change could go into effect in mid-July 2024. So that's going to be best covered down here. So we're actually going to get into that right now. All right, so implications for members. There would be, so remember what we just read. So we were talking about compensation offers moved off the MLS. So traditionally as real estate agents, we know that whenever we log into the MLS and we see the properties that are available, we see what the buyer agent commission is. That is going away. That is gone, or will be gone by the time that they set out, which is July. There will continue to be many ways in which buyer brokers could be compensated. So remember the tie-in that we were just talking about, including through offers of compensations communicated off of MLS. So, I mean, that's the only option. As we have long believed that it is in the interest of the sellers, buyers, and their brokers to make offers of compensation. So, well, let's continue. But using the MLS to communicate offers of compensation would no longer be an option. So essentially, NAR is saying you still should get paid, and we still believe that you should get paid and all that fun stuff, but that type of conversation is no longer going to happen on the MLS as a settlement in order to satiate the plaintiffs, right? The home sellers that originally brought this, plus the attorneys that haven't done that math, that are going to take 40% of the, keep in mind, they've already collected 82 million from, I think it was anywhere, 50 million from, we just did a video on this, 50 million from Remax, 70 million from Keller Williams. So they asked for 40, it averaged out to about 40% of that taking. So from this taking, the attorneys are collecting $166 million. You factor in those other fees, I think it was 82 million, if I remember correctly. So right now they have secured the bag. Whoever I know who the attorney is. I'm just not gonna share their name. But anyway, that individual and the rest of the attorneys involved, they can retire at this point. The types of compensation available for buyer brokers would continue to take multiple forms depending on broker consumer negotiations, but not included to. So here's essentially how we're getting paid, if you will, which hasn't really changed. It's just more where this conversation typically was had. Fixed fee commission paid directly from the consumer. So a buyer working with you can absolutely just pay you an amount that you so choose. You want to buy a house? I'm going to charge you X. Fixed fee, straight up. Now, is that going to make it harder for buyers that are barely making it to hire somebody professional under that model? 100%. Does that matter with this lawsuit that's supposed to avoid that or to help the consumer at the end of the day and also lower prices? Of course, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of sarcasm there. Consumer for the seller, concession from the seller. So in the offer, hey, this is the offer that we're proposing, and this is my compensation, take it or leave it, and negotiate back and forth. Or the portion of the listing broker's compensation. So this is the traditional way, or the way that had been going, where listing broker secures a listing and will charge anywhere it was never fixed, by the way. There's no collusion between NAR and all the brokers to keep commissions inflated high and thus driving up home values. That was not the real estate agent commission that did that. But again, more heavy sarcasm. So portion of the listing broker's compensation, where you would typically get a listing and then a portion of that amount that was secured there would go towards the buyer, or the listing agent would offer towards the buyer's agent. That's what you would typically see. Again, nothing that in of itself has theoretically been available forever and for always. Maybe the concession from the seller component, that one has not really been available, but for the most part, that's been available. For those three elements have been available forever and for always. Now, that conversation used to be mostly done, or if not all done, on the MLS. So now it's going to be a little bit more. There's going to be more conversations that buyer agents need to have. So one of the things that buyer agents, including myself back in the day, I'll raise my hand. Back in the day, I used to say, and what I hear many agents say right now is, you don't pay my commission, or my services are free. Well, if your services are free, why are you getting a commission once the transaction is closed? I said that for a while. So not pointing fingers. I was totally in the camp of like, my services are free. So yeah, hopefully nobody has a, anyway, so we'll keep going. Compensation will continue to be negotiable and should always be negotiated between agents and the consumers they serve. Cool. All right, so let's go back and I'll kind of popcorn back and forth just so we kind of get the good implementation of this, or the highlights of what's actually going to be implemented. All right, so written agreements for MLS participants acting for buyers. While NAR has been advocating for the use of written agreement for years, in this settlement, we have agreed to require MLS participants working with buyers to enter into written representation agreements with their buyers. This change would go into effect in mid-July 2024. There's states, I want to say it's like almost half of the states, but there's states that didn't even have written agreements. Now, I practice in Texas, so we have had written agreements, and I've been with brokers that didn't necessarily, one broker that didn't necessarily require me to have it, but I've also been with a broker that does require me to have it. So for me, this isn't necessarily new, but these buyer written agreements, buyer agreements are going to be a requirement at this point. So written agreements, while haven't been adopted by all the states, now all states will need to adopt it, and all of the NAR participants need to have written agreements. NAR would pay $418 million over approximately 4 years. This is a substantial sum, no kidding, and it will be incumbent on NAR to use our remaining resources in the most efficient way possible to continue delivering our core mission. Just to give you an idea, NAR has like over $1 billion in assets. Now, it's not all liquid, and much of that is tied into what's the value of the MLSs that they own, what's the value of the things that you can only make liquid by actually selling. So while on paper, yes, it has over $1 billion, it doesn't mean that NAR has $1 billion in the coffer. Not even close. Even if they try to sell an entity like that, like an MLS or anything that they own that's that would need to be sold, you're not going to claim that type of value, especially after a verdict like this. Just to put that in perspective, NAR's membership dues for 2024 will not change because of this payment. Keyword being 2024. Keyword being 2024. 2025, don't ask us about that one, because that one will go up. That one, I mean, there's no way around it. NAR continues to deny any wrongdoing. So this is essentially the settlement component, right? We're going to settle because we don't want to continue dragging this months into years, all this court costs. So remember, when it comes to the defense of NAR and also all the other brokerages, they're paying legal representation. They're paying them from $400 to $1,200 an hour to their attorneys, depending on the attorneys that they have. They're paying that monthly. They're ongoing and paying this. The plaintiff's side, not trying to villainize the Missouri home sellers that brought this case, but from the plaintiff's side, the attorneys, they have this on contingency basis, right? So how do we know this? Well, just last week we talked about how how the attorneys were looking for about 82% of what was already adjudicated or was already settled between between Keller Williams, between Anywhere Real Estate, between who's the third one? Remax. Yeah, Remax. So they were already looking for 40-something%, and they're essentially just passing around the digital hat, like, hey, we're doing this. They didn't say pro bono, obviously. We're doing this on a contingency. All of the costs we're incurring, and we pray that the court, the literal legal jargon that is put in these cases, in case you haven't read one before, like, we pray that the court sees it our way or whatever. But anyway, I got lost. What was I talking about? NAR continues to do. Oh, anyway, yeah. So NAR has continued. I forgot the point that I was trying to make, and when I got too caught up into the character. NAR has long maintained that we continue to believe that cooperative compensation in NAR's current policies are good things that benefit buyers and sellers. They promote access to property ownership, particularly for lower and middle income buyers who can have a difficult enough time saving for a down payment. With this settlement, NAR is confident in its members can still achieve these goals. Regardless of what you believe, just read that and interpret how you typically personalities are going to come out. Again, the pessimists are going to be pessimists. The positive people are going to be positive. The irrational people are going to continue being irrational, and the rational people are going to continue. If you are winning in real estate right now, chances are you're going to continue winning. I don't know what else to tell you. If you're struggling in real estate right now and you're just not putting out the effort and all that stuff, chances are you're not going to make it. It sounds very direct because it is, but it's essentially what's going to happen. I remember what I was talking about. Something I wanted to bring up was the whole contingency from the plaintiff side and the cost, that the legal implications that NAR and all the other brokers that were implicated. Plus, this is just one lawsuit, right? But NAR, this settlement is designed to not only settle this, but the copycat lawsuit. So you have the moment that there's been over 23. Last video that we made, I believe, was number 23. But anyway, there's over 20. I can confidently tell you that. There's over 20 lawsuits that NAR has been named in. Each one of those lawsuits requires their own, to be added to the attorney bill, added to the legal bill, and they're paying this monthly. The plaintiff sides, they're going to collect a fraction of the money because the attorneys are going to take over 40%, but they collect, and they're going to collect when all these settlements happen, and they're not coming out of pocket. So that's why you have your clients that have probably emailed you, have probably texted you, have probably sent you an image of, hey, I just got this postcard in the mail. Hey, I just got this letter in the mail saying that if I had sold between this time and this time, I am eligible for, let us know. We would like to sue on your behalf, or I'm eligible for a settlement. So that's what's been happening. Anyway, so coverage of NAR's release, implications to the members. There's one thing I want to cover here, I believe. Implications of broker owners. I'm going to link this all down below. I just wanted to give you the highlights there. Implications for NAR. Yeah, we already talked about that. The release. Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah, practice changes. We talked about that. This is very important. So once you check out the link down below, make sure that you read this particular part, and also go to the official publication that NAR just gave, because this is going to be within it. Implications for home buyers and sellers. The settlement would preserve the choices consumers have regarding real estate services and compensation. After the new rule goes into effect, listing brokers and sellers could continue to offer compensation for buyer broker services. So remember, that doesn't go away. I remember just this with 5 minutes of just me reading these Facebook posts. It leaves people are just going crazy. They're thinking that this is not available. This is the whole that the listing brokers can't offer a portion of the compensation to buyer broker services. So they're saying that buyers are done, they're gone, which is not the case. But such offers could not be communicated via the MLS. Again, that whole how much you're getting compensated on the MLS, that's not going to show. There's no field for that. Stop looking for that. It's something you're going to have to do off platform, basically off the MLS. The settlement expressly provides that sellers may communicate with seller concessions such as buyer closing costs via the MLS, provided that such concessions are not conditioned on the use of or payment to a buyer broker. So read that again. So the settlement expressly provides that sellers may communicate seller concessions such as buyer closing costs via the MLS, provided that such concessions are not conditioned on the use of or payment to a buyer broker. So you can offer it there, but it's not going to be because of. New rule about written agreements. NAR has long encouraged, we just talked about that. Get your buyer rep agreement signed. Please, 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 and let them know that there is, certainly don't tell them that your services are free like many agents have been saying. including myself back in the day. So just make sure you get your buyer agreement signed. After the new rule goes into effect, MLS participants acting for buyers would be required to enter into written agreements with their buyers before touring a home. So you need to have these reps. Some of you are going to really, really enjoy this simply because of that fact. Okay, some of you either don't get buyer rep agreements and are going out and about and just showing homes to everybody that will have them, that wants them. Now, if you can get some commitment from the buyers, how much more effective are you going to be with your time, as opposed to showing homes to 10 individuals that 9 of them have no intentions of even using you. They just need you to be a literal door opener. So it's going to help you. These agreements can help consumers understand exactly what services and value will be provided for how much. All right, so because the agreement could not end litigation as to all defendants, litigation concerning cooperative compensation may continue. So remember, this is not the end. In Batten, NAR's answer to plaintiff's amended complaint is due on April 14th. This is a status hearing in May 7th. So remember, this is very, very, very important. Litigation concerning cooperative compensation may continue. So there's going to be things like change, next steps in the settlement process. So it goes on to explain that the approval needs to be still done by the court. So the court's going to review, and it may take several months or more. In large class action settlements like this, objections and opt-outs are common, and plaintiffs and NAR will handle them as they come. So that's going to look a little bit different. All right, let's see. This goes on to appeal. All right, that's really all I wanted to cover on this. It's been a lot. Let me know what you think. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think. Are you changing the way that you're doing business, or have you already changed since this was originally brought up a few years ago? Let me know in the comment section down below. I'll keep you updated as we get more information, more tangible information, and I'll see you on the next one.